Well, hello, you're all very welcome to another episode of our podcast, Employee 360, which focuses really on employee wellness. And every week we get to meet so many different heads of HR or learning and development or people and culture across the country. And what we're getting is a flavor of really what's happening in terms and cutting edge a lot of times in terms of how employee welfare is gone to the top of the list of how we manage our companies, because it's so important to ensure that the people with you are happy, healthy, and well. And we spend so much time at work that it's such a key area for us to focus on. We've got a fantastic panel with us this week. We've got Mary McDonagh, who's the head of HR and Payroll Services at IFAC Ireland. We've got Maura Winston. She's the Chief People Officer at Cairn Homes PLC. We've got Dr. Arlene Egan. She's the Director of Learning and Thought Leadership and Executive Coach at Roffey Park International. We've got Roisin Walsh, who's the Head of People and Culture at Publicjobs.ie. And we've got Jordan McCullough, who's the Group People and Culture Manager at Bluewave Group. So you're all very welcome. And I'll be coming to you each in turn as the episode goes on. But as always, we've got Mark Corkery. Mark, who's with Premier Life. And Mark, every week on this podcast, we look at some area that's common across all the different concerns of employee welfare. But specific to you, it has to be said, your expertise is helping companies with the financial aspect of their employees. And today, you know, we've spoken before in the last couple of weeks about, you know, how it's so important to look at the fully rounded aspect of it. But today, can you talk about what you'll be covering, which is important, the security side of it, just making sure that an employee is feeling secure?
Yeah. So first of all, welcome everybody to the podcast. And I suppose last week, Breandán, we looked at security, and I suppose what I was looking at this week is looking from my experience when employees have clarity about their current role and feel they have basic security, they're more open to improving their relationships and their own personal development. So from, say, this solid base, they have the opportunity to look forward, plan for the future, and grow in their relationships, health, career, and finances. And I think there's a great quote from Abraham Maslow, which says, one can choose to go back towards safety or forwards towards growth. Growth must be chosen again and again, and fear must be overcome again and again. So for me, based on this quote, I think if you have basic security, you at least have the platform to choose for growth.
Okay. And of course, Mark, you help employees with their financial wellness, really. But are employees good at thinking ahead? Are they good at planning?
Yeah. You know, in general, we all have plans for the future, but we can't never really express clearly what they are. And I believe to meet your plans for the future, you have to put some time into considering and expressing what you want in the future. And I often see employees expressing, say, financial goals as having X amount of money by X date. And then if they fall anyway slightly short of that target, they felt that they've failed. So what I do is I encourage my financial wellness clients to set 3 levels of goals. So there's a good goal, a better goal, and a best goal. And for me, then that gives them a range of results so that they can achieve. And it's not like a pass or fail result.
Okay. Maybe we talk about the first thing, Mark, that we need to focus on, which is reaching your goals. Would you like to chat about that then?
Sure, Breandán. Yeah, so for today, the theme for the podcast is, what do you do to help your employees reach their potential or goals? So how do you help them express and attain their goals? So in financial coaching, I call this growing your money. And growing your money is all about knowing what goals you want to achieve in the future and having the money in place to achieve those goals. So to help employees grow their money, I do what I call a 7-step grow your money action path. So this exercise helps employees express their goals and then budget for the cost of achieving those goals in the timeline they set. So what I'd love to hear from the panel this morning is, how do you help your employees reach their goals?
Okay, big question for the panel then. And Listen, we've got such a good panel. I think we're going to get very interesting answers from all of this. I might start with you, Dr. Arlene Egan, Director of Learning and Thought Leadership and Executive Coach at Roffey Park International. Your thoughts on that in terms of the goals employees may have, and I wonder a lot of times, do they unearth their goals to the companies, and how can you help them to reach those goals?
Well, thank you very much, and what a beautiful question, Mark. So I suppose what we've been noticing certainly over the pandemic, and now it's funny that you mentioned the growing your money, Mark, because I recently did a piece for a HRN network in the UK called Growing Back to Work, which was exactly that idea of how do you get, I suppose, the mindset for people around the kinds of questions that they should be asking now about their career, even that purpose piece and that belonging piece about how they now fit into a changed organization, and understanding how to reach their potential, and even what interests them now in some ways around how organizations are working, how relationships are being built, and how communication is happening internally, but also what are relationships with clients like now, and customers. And so certainly in Roffey Park, from an internal perspective, I suppose, in terms of working with the internal team, it's really about helping them to realize how they can navigate through, I suppose, a changed workforce. We have moved to flexible arrangements. We've moved to remote working. We have taken on agile learning and agile working in quite a strong way. And so some of those changes that we're seeing, we have to help our employees to understand how they now fit into this new culture. And so working with employees around, I suppose, first of all, communicating the strategic direction of the organization, and having regular communications, both, from kind of all aspects of the organization, up, down, and sideways. So what we have learned, not only from, our own, and talking to our employees about what will make a difference for them in helping them to achieve their potential, is the value of communication and the value of regular communication, so that they can understand the scope of choices that they have available to them, and also how organizations are willing to support them. I remember when obviously we think back to the pandemic, and I remember when we were working with external clients, I remember one participant on one of our leadership programs talking about the fact that, that question of how are you has never been so important as it was during the pandemic, and that pausing for the actual answer. And so within our organization in Roffey Park International, we're working with our staff to understand how they fit into this new landscape that we have in terms of going forward and growing back, and sustaining and moving in a positive direction, but also really listening to what they have learned about themselves and how they have changed and where their interests might lie as well. So I suppose there's multiple ways of looking at it, but certainly, one of the biggest lessons that we've learned, and one of the behaviors that we were trying to really nail down in an effective way, is two-way communication internally. So I suppose that's just one of the starting points.
Okay. It's key, isn't it? Two-way communication, really trying to find out what do people want? What are their goals? Maybe over to you, Jordan McCullough, of the Group People and Culture Manager at Bluewave Group. Tell us a little bit about the culture at Bluewave Group, and your thoughts on Mark's question.
Yeah, so our company is 100% remote, and it always has been 100% remote, even before remote was a cool thing, obviously during COVID. And for the last 18 to 20 months now, I think we've all kind of been experienced of that there, being a bit isolated and out there as well through the remote scene that we've had to build and had to react to. And I know a lot of businesses had to react very much so, a lot more than other ones as well. Within our organization, we always look at goals. We want people to achieve what they want to get. We are a Salesforce partner, so therefore, we work with consultants, we work with developers, but we also work with other organizations to help them get their Salesforce into place and implement that there. So one of our key things is making sure that our learning in particular is the creme de la creme, the top of the top. And one thing I like Mark when he said about is having that good, better, and best goal, because that's kind of the where we work to within Bluewave as well. It's like, where's good, where's better, and where's the best, to try and get them as into the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, from the security element right up to self-esteem and that their ways. So we do want people to do that continuous learning. And that's what we do with our goals in regards to every aspect of what we do within the Bluewave group, is we do that continuous cycle of review with the goals, because a goal just doesn't finish. A goal is only the start of the journey to get you to from A to B. Let's get from B to Z right at the end of the alphabet, and then go from Z to AA and continue on from that there, because it is only the start of meeting your self-esteem from that there ways, because you always want to better yourself. That's how we work with our employees and how we work as a business. I want to say we're very informal. We do have that collaborative culture within business where someone can just pick up the phone or ping you a message and say, hey, let's have a chat. And it could be anything in regards to health, finance, anything in regards to that there, or trying to share experience, because a lot of the stuff that we do is it's sharing experience of each other. And that itself is a goal to some people within our organization, is being able to share that experience and being able to communicate that there clearly to other people, where the communication is aspect and is key in what we do.
Brilliant. Let me turn to you, Mary McDonagh, who's head of HR and payroll services at IFAC Ireland. Mary, your thoughts on that, and maybe a little bit about IFAC and the culture there.
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me, Breandán. Just to talk about IFAC briefly, it is the #1 professional services firm focusing on food, agribusiness, and obviously farm. And the areas that we cover in the main we're well known for would be the accountancy, the tax, audit, food and agribusiness, financial planning and corporate finance, and now, of course, HR and payroll services. So it's a large organization with 30 offices around the country. And of course, now we're working remotely, we had to execute our business continuity plan very, very quickly, and did so. We couldn't believe how quickly we actually got that off the ground, but that was testament to a phenomenal IT team and teams in place all around the country, because we are client focused and we need to deliver. The focus would be, there's a great focus on team development and the culture. And I would say the culture here is very much open, collaborative, with real emphasis on team development, as I said before, empowerment, communication, and interestingly enough, ownership of goals and results. And that's huge. That is really important, because you are dealing with clients every day. So it is important that whoever is delivering for those clients is best in their field, and that is important to us. Now, within our own team here in HR services and payroll, we have something called Drive Your Own Career. So that helps our Drive Your Own Career /path in IFAC, because very often it may not be that you want to go upwards, you might want to work on projects, etc. So once a year, at the beginning of the year, we sit down with each team member and talk through what their plans are or what they would like to do within IFAC. So again, it's a two-way conversation. So there'll be an element of what they're looking for and maybe what we think that they could develop as well. And then there are one-to-one meetings every month about how that is going and how they're developing. And again, how we can support them or facilitate them, or where we might think there's room for improvement, or they're not achieving it, or maybe the goals are changing depending on life circumstances, etc. So in IFAC, it's very much a continuous conversation, open and collaborative, and that is just the environment we want to have, and that is what we're fostering. And it's very much an open, collaborative focus on team development. We have a graduate program, for example, in place. So obviously there is a real focus on training and development in this organization.
Mm-hmm. Okay. very interesting. So again, the emphasis on openness and that maybe creating that environment where people can push forward with their own goals. Roisin Walsh, head of people and culture at Publicjobs.ie. Your perspective on all of this.
Yeah, so thanks Brendan and Mark for inviting me to the podcast today. I suppose Publicjobs.ie, we're the centralised recruiter for the civil service. So at present, there's about 40,000 civil servants employed across the civil service. We also do some recruitment for the public service, so the HSE, An Garda Síochána, the local authorities. So I suppose when we were confronted with the pandemic last year, our key objective was to support the government's response and to put key personnel into key roles across the public service. So we had to pivot really, really quickly in terms of bringing our recruitment services online. And that was hugely challenging for us because prior to the pandemic, the majority of our recruitment would have been delivered in a face-to-face scenario. So it was hugely challenging. Last year, we had close to 90,000 applications. So we really had to pivot quickly, and that required a lot of resilience and commitment and motivation. And our workforce have done an unbelievable job in sustaining that kind of commitment and level of dedication, and they've really worked with us and collaborated with us to deliver for the public service over the last 20 months. So, you know, they've had to develop new skills, things like resilience, you know, things like self-care, managing the well-being of teams. They're not skills that weren't there before, but they're skills that they've had to really, that have come to the fore over the last 20 months. So for us, something that's been really important is learning and development. And that's really been at the centre in terms of supporting our staff, along with well-being as well. But learning and development, there's been a real opportunity for innovation in this space for us. And, you know, we definitely feel now that, you know, one size does not fit all when it comes to learning and development, and that a much more personal touch is really, really important. And our L&D partner, Anne-Marie Brennan, she's absolutely fantastic. And when we have new people joining our organisation, she meets with them within the first 2 weeks to have a career conversation. And what she discusses is things like the L&D opportunities available and their career aspirations, how they can maximise their experience in the organisation and contribute, and their own career goals. So, you know, there has been a blurring of lines between the personal and professional. So it's important for us that we kind of go in there at the start when we recruit somebody, and they have good support in place from day one. The role as a manager is also really, really important, and it has been more so, I think, during the pandemic, to maintain that sense of connection between the organisation and the individuals, because obviously you're not as visible. And so we've really invested heavily in training for managers as well, and training them with those new skills. And similar to what Arlene was saying and Mary was saying, it's a two-way conversation. So, you know, you have the managers, and we're encouraging them to engage on an ongoing basis, seek feedback, provide support, talk to employees. You know, it's a 360 scenario with feedback, support them on their learning journey, support them with opportunities for mobility. But it's also the responsibility of the employee to set out their stall in terms of their aspirations as well. So learning and development has been a real area of focus for us. And we feel that the digital learning, this new world of digital learning is much more accessible and inclusive, because it kind of levels the playing field and everyone has access to these new types of initiatives, in particular things like bite-sized learning, you know, recorded sessions. That's what our people are looking for, things that they can engage with in shorter time frames, that they can engage with recordings. They're looking for more video content, all of those kind of things. So, you know, it's completely shifted, but it's actually created a lot more of a level playing field and a greater level of accessibility for all employees. So I think that's been really, really important. And just I'll finish on the L&D piece with something that's worked very well for us in our organization is whereby staff from the organisation who work in different units have actually designed training interventions themselves over the last 20 months to deliver to the wider organisation. So, for example, our IT team have been delivering bite-sized sessions in digital collaboration tools. Our data protection officer sessions around data protection in the remote working environment. Our marketing team have delivered sessions on communications, HR and remote working. So we've really leveraged the skills within our organisation to bring people along, and that's helped with connection as well. So, Yeah, L&D has definitely, and a new approach has definitely supported employees across the organisation to achieve their potential and their goals, I think.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And finally, to you, Maura Winston, you're the Chief People Officer at Cairn Homes PLC. So tell us about Cairn Homes and the culture there.
Sure, thanks, Brendan and Mark, and thanks for inviting me on today. It's interesting because we all face very different challenges. When I hear the different presenters today and I hear Jordan talking about being fully remote even before COVID, you know, we're a construction company. We can't build homes remotely, and we face very, very different challenges. We've got two sides to our workforce. Basically, as a developer and a construction organisation, we have 250 employees. About 70% of those are site-based. The remainder are central office or more desk-orientated. We have a subcontractor supply chain of about 2,500. While they don't work directly for us, their well-being and their development and their retention within their own subcontractor organisations is obviously a key concern for us, because without their engagement and support, we won't be able to deliver on not only our own business plans, but that of our housing plans across our government agencies. So yeah, we've a mix of site and office staff. The site staff start their day at 7:30, rain or shine. They're conducting physical work, they're managing time, materials, contractor relationships, staff outside their immediate teams, etc., etc. And now we've obviously got a hybrid environment for those that are more office-based, where they're either logging in remotely or they're actually in the office space in a reduced capacity, conducting design, planning, and other sort of corporate work. And our biggest challenge, I suppose, throughout COVID was trying to avoid the them and us, because it's a very easy culture to fit in, where you've got, while the construction industry was closed for a number of weeks, it was in total only about 6 to 8 weeks where we were actually fully off site. So you had people that were continuing to do the majority of their construction work for the duration of the time. So what we had to do during that period was reach out and really understanding what was important to our employees that kept them bonded together in a culture, and make sure that we could find the common ground. And as part of that, we defined our employee value proposition, which I'm sure many of people on this call have looked at previously. And in looking at that, the three themes that came through from us, from all our employees, was that they wanted to be connected, they wanted to be developed, and they wanted to be inspired. And that was across the board. So our role as part of my people team and many of the other leadership team members was to work out, well, what does connect mean, what does develop mean, and what does inspire mean to the various different cohorts. So we've made a significant investment in our connection. Is all about our engagement surveys and actually continually leading and tracking our culture scores and the initiatives that we're putting out. Our development one is interesting because obviously it's a key theme for here today, and COVID turned this on its head. The majority of our development programs in the past would have focused on the what and the how, as opposed to the why. And we've really, it's the golden circle, and it's nothing new, but from our perspective, it's new to our organization, because we actually did try and focus in a lot on the why. What are you here to do, and how do we help you do that? And we did find that even when we were suffering with concerns around mental health and well-being, and the construction industry is a very challenging industry when it comes to health and well-being. And even in looking at that and our own program of Wellbeing Matters, you know, unless we can actually guide people through that why they're actually you know, coming to work every day and what they're looking to personally achieve, you know, you're really not able to deliver the learning and development at the next level. So I mean, we're really at the beginning of that. We're rolling out a leadership development program, an executive development program called Elevate Our Leaders, and that's focusing very much on that why piece, and then cascading that down through the organization. So I mean, in summary, from our perspective, while we do have an incredibly collaborative culture, and I'm really proud of the culture we've managed to create within Cairn, our key our key driver is driving that collaboration and driving a connected workforce through this period where all the rules are being thrown up in the air for one cohort, whereas another cohort are still very much in the bricks and mortar of what we do. So COVID really made us, I suppose, look at that EVP, what's important across our organisation, looking at our development agenda and focusing a little bit more on the why as opposed to the what and the how. But all of that has to be embedded, and Maslow's hierarchy of needs was mentioned earlier. Unless our employees are in a space from both the well-being at work and from a personal well-being perspective where they can absorb the learning and development in a positive manner, you're actually just wasting your time on those initiatives is what we found. So a lot of the time over the last sort of 6 to 12 months has been putting well-being ambassadors on each of our sites and driving that agenda to make sure that we actually create the space to absorb any of the initiatives and programs we're trying to roll out.
Brilliant. Mark, can I bring you back in here now? What we've heard from everybody really is openness, two-way communication. The emphasis on well-being is incredible, really. What are your takeaways from what you've heard so far?
First of all, I heard so much. There's amazing insights into wellness within each of the participants' companies there. Just quoting a few, as you mentioned, the two-way communication. I suppose it's unusual in the time that where we're all kind of restricted from being with each other. The two-way communication was the most important thing at the time. I suppose I think there as well, when we're planning and all these things, I think it was Mike Tyson said everybody has a plan until you get a punch in the face, and I think somebody mentioned their business continuity plan. I remember in our own business, we had one of those on the shelf for years, and you thought you'd never need it until COVID arrived. And then all of a sudden your plan became a reality, and then you had to bring it all to fruition. So, the last 18 months has really helped us kind of sit down and kind of consider what if things that we need to consider. And I think Roisin mentioned about, listening and relationships. And I very much think we covered last week as well, is about the two-way honesty between, say, the employee and the employer, where both people can express what they want without fear of being judged or anything like that. So it's, that honesty and being able to listen on a two-way communication is very important. And I think Jordan mentioned a continuous overview, and a goal is, is a history after a few months' time. So a continuous overview is very important, and to be able to constantly talk about your goals, how they are today, what they are tomorrow, and where you want to achieve them in the future. And I thought Mary's idea about driving your own career was very interesting, because so for all of us, it's a journey, and where we're starting, where we're moving on to. And that journey is constantly changing. It has lots of bends in the road and everything like that. So I thought the concept of having a drive your own career meeting was hugely important and very, very kind of influential. I think then Maura's last point, I truly have this issue all the time when I come to explaining people with their financial goals as well, is what's your why? Because too many people just do it for the amount or the reason or something like that. But if they don't understand why they're doing it, they kind of usually lose out halfway through. They kind of lose interest in what they're doing. So it's really important to get down to the why, and then the what can come up afterwards, and how, that kind of thing. So overall, great insights there into each one of the companies.
Yeah. If I can, but throw a couple of questions out to everybody now, rather than individual, maybe I'll throw it out group wise. Are we seeing, since the start of COVID, we'll say, are we seeing different needs coming forward from employees? And if so, what are they? I mean, I know we've got remote working and family needs and all that, but are you seeing a clearly different need coming through? Maybe I'll start with Dr. Arlene Egan on that.
Sorry, I think the conversations have changed. So, again, we're in a recruitment drive, a rather active recruitment drive in Roffey Park International at the moment. And, what's interesting is that, to the point of security, where people were looking for, I suppose, having different types of security conversations with us last year, now the focus is back on, and my development and my progression, and, and so, and I think those conversations are, well, certainly from our perspective, those conversations are happening in a calmer way, as opposed to it being something frenetic and something panicky. So, while I'm certainly, what we're picking up is that, this craving for craving for purpose is there. And again, we're being asked a lot about, what does this company stand for? And, how will I fit into that? And how does this align with me? So again, I think that we're returning to older types of conversations that we might have been having post-pandemic that weren't necessarily high on the agenda, through the pandemic. So while I see the needs as kind of being differentiated, one of the big things though is, and I don't think that we can water down that difference between family and work. And I think, Roisin, you mentioned it, people do need to know how to negotiate both, and create clear boundaries, and like we're hearing now, a work blend as opposed to a work-life blend as opposed to work-life balance, and people are kind of wondering, how will you as an organization help me to achieve that? So I suppose that's kind of where we're starting.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Mary, have you seen any extra layer of stress over the time where people have gone to remote working and maybe works builds a little bit too much into the family life? Is there any stress coming your way from that, do you think?
We didn't quite experience that, but what we did notice is when we went into isolation, for want of a better description, when the Taoiseach announced that we were all going to work remotely, that some people were working in isolation. And so very quickly, we decided to set up what we called our wellness committee. And that was a group of 4 people got together and looked at, they're just minor tweaks. Having a virtual coffee morning, and the only rule was that you could not talk about work. So people got to just have a casual conversation that they might have in the office about, it could be about, well, it couldn't be about games because there were no games going on, but it could have been the events of the day. It could be anything, but it did help to connect people. I think Arlene mentioned that connection was an issue. And we found that was important for people to have that. And they really valued their Thursday morning virtual coffee morning. There were lots of other programs. We rolled out the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program. We know that's been availed of, and that's been hugely beneficial to people. In relation, not in my own team did we have problems with childcare, but I know colleagues did, where they were trying to manage looking after children and possibly then 2 adults working, and that was a struggle. So during that period, it was very much flexible working, in the sense that you could have mum working from 7 in the morning till 12, and then dad looking after the children in the afternoon. And we worked with that. There was no problem, because at that point, and it still is, the well-being of our team members is paramount, because if they're not healthy and if things are not working well, it doesn't work well for us either. So it is a two-way street, and we do have to mind our people. I think that was something that really came to the fore during COVID times, so we do have to mind people and their mental well-being in particular. We also had programs. We had the likes of Dr. Harry Barry coming in, giving us tips on resilience, mental health, etc., which were hugely beneficial, which meant that you could talk about it quite openly and it wasn't frowned upon. There was no stigma attached to it. So it made it easier for people to have conversations with their colleagues over Teams, over MS Teams during the day. I'm having a tough day, and it wasn't a major issue, because everybody was going to have that conversation at some point or another.
Okay. Jordan, within the conversation of employee wellness, Mark's key area, financial wellness is very important, but traditionally that's something that's very sort of tough, I suppose, for companies to deal with. Where does that fall on the hierarchy, and how do you approach that with employees? So
with financial, obviously, we all go to work to get a pay packet at the end of the month. It's not, some people say it's not about the money that makes us do a job. And for some people, that's a really true fact that, it's not the money for the job and so on that their ways. However, essentially we all go to work. We either get paid weekly, bi-weekly, or at the end of the month with our pay. So making sure that we can balance their needs is obviously very, very important. My previous employer, I can actually talk about them because they did this very well. Without saying any names, it's a major Swedish furniture retailer that's the worldwide one, if you can take up the gist in that one. And they did this very well because obviously I transitioned from the from that retailer into Bluewave. So I did, and it was a very much face-to-face environment. But they focused very much so onto the wellness and financial wellness. While we were there, they actually changed the EIP program and provider during the time. And one of the things they actually put up for their staff was a COVID support fund for anybody who had a hardship fund hardship through COVID. And I know within the island of Ireland, because I looked after the island to include Northern Ireland with that, we had about, I want to say, 2,500 employees across the whole island, and 50% of the people applied for it, and out of that 50%, 45% were successful of that total number of employees. So it was around 80% of all employees that actually applied for this hardship fund received that there through the retailer. And it's putting little things like that there into places where hardship would be seen, and them lower end jobs, where it's a retail assistant or housekeepers. But, you know, every job is as important as any other. You know, we don't look at any.
Jordan, it probably sends out a strong message that, listen, you care about your employees, you're thinking about them, you've got their back, essentially. Yeah,
essentially, you know, there's nothing more important than this well-being. And as many people have said here today, I think everybody's kind of said it, is that COVID especially has brought this to the forefront, where HR and people practitioners have been putting this to the forefront in all of our people meetings, monthly meetings, yearly meetings with CEOs and so on, to say, look, we need to look well-being here. We have a problem. This is it here. And it's kind of been passed off in the agenda as a tick box. It's something we need to do. Here's the policy we have. That's okay. Review the policy. Where, you know, in the last 18 months, a lot of companies have had to look at obviously everything in regards to wellness, because we have been together apart, essentially that their way, and that iconic phrase, that together apart. And, you know, where we've got Maura there who works with the construction industry. Yes, you can't build houses remotely by any way, means or shapes. You can do certain jobs remotely, which, you know, these people would be very much hard done by this year. I'm very fortunate that I work for an organization that has been remote and always will be remote going forward. And the salaries that we pay are very well off because of the talent we need to bring into the organization. And we actually have a shortage in that talent. So financial well-being for everybody at every level is key to ensure you, first of all, capture the talent, but also retain the talent within the business, because if you can't give them the financials, they're going to look elsewhere and head somewhere else.
Yes. Roisin, can I ask you, we talk to heads of HR and heads of people and culture and all of that all the time on this show. Can you tell us, what do you personally love about the role, and what's most challenging?
From a personal point of view, you know, I think HR has moved from a kind of an administrative space where you're dealing with contracts and hiring and firing to a much more strategic space. And I think that's the piece of HR that I love now, that it's much more about partnering with senior management in the organization to deliver on those corporate objectives. So you're working at that level, you're putting in place interventions like performance management, change management, all of those interesting well-being, learning and development, interesting types of interventions that can actually support the organization to deliver, build the capability of the organization. And that's really exciting. And I think it also helps the organization to see the value of HR as well. So, you know, you increase your credibility within the organization. It's become much more, particularly in the civil service, the focus on professionalism and bringing in HR professionals has been really strong in recent years. Mm-hmm. So I think that strategic focus and seeing where we add value is something I really enjoy. And what was the second part of that? Oh, what's more challenging?
Yeah. Don't you enjoy?
Yeah, what don't I enjoy? Well, I mean, obviously there's a lot of, you know, the industrial relations side of it isn't as enjoyable, but I think what's been, like, you know, really challenging and difficult as a HR practitioner to see, you know, how challenging it's been for staff over the last 18 months. So some people have loved this new remote working environment and really embraced it, and they've found that flexibility that, you know, helps them to have a better work-life balance. But for others, they've been really dealing with burnout and workload management. And in our most recent surveys, workload management is becoming a really big issue. And we've had to take that right to the top in our organization, where you know, we put well-being on the management board agenda. We look at it on a bi-weekly basis. We look at the strategic program of work for the organization, and we reprioritize with our senior management team to try and manage that burnout and that workload, because, you know, talks and, you know, articles are just not enough in that space. It has to be a strategic intervention at that level. So that's something that's been challenging, that we're really working with the organization to help better manage our strategic program of work alongside our day-to-day business, but also continue to deliver for our customers and our clients and the candidates who apply for roles in the public service. So yeah, it's been hard to see, you know, people going through those particularly challenging times. But I think when you have those wellbeing supports in there, when they feel safe, they're more engaged, they're more productive, and they're happier, and the world is a better place.
Good. And Maura, to you finally, before we go back to Mark, where do you see things going over the next couple of years in terms of your role, let's say, or that role in general, and how employee wellness is with the companies?
It's an interesting one. In the Cairn journey, we're scaling at the moment, so we've doubled our workforce over the last 12 months. So it's been very hard to sort of onboard people into a culture, and you know, and in Cairn, you know, we always say that people deliver for people. The relationships are really, really strong. So I suppose our challenge has been over the last 12 months is trying to embed a culture where people are potentially so hard to bring them all together and induct them and orientate them, you know, fully hands-on. So how that will translate into the future is going to be interesting, because I think the biggest challenge for our organization, and I think it will be a challenge for others. Mind you, there are other companies that have worked remotely for far long. Our research and surveys would show that our culture, values, and our recognition to the Cairn brand of our employees is less among those people in the first 12 months as a result of COVID than 3 years ago, when they came in and they were part of a team day to day. They had a touch point with, you know, the head office, if you want to call it that, although we try to avoid that term. So, I mean, I think that what will happen in the future, and I'm sorry to say this, I think the loyalty to organizational values will be diminished through remote working. I think the loyalties to personal relationships will be diminished. And that's not to take away from the point that people go to work for pay. They absolutely do, particularly in our industry. That's very, very true. We can lose employees down the road for a small benefit, you know, at a particular point in time. And it's based on the culture of the cyclical nature of our industry in the past. Potentially make hay while the sun shines is in the background there. So to me, I'm a believer in trying to find a way to drive the connection as early as we can, and that is hard to do at times through a remote environment. So to me, that attrition rate will potentially increase, the level of loyalty to brand and EVP will decrease, and the challenge for leaders as a result will actually just magnify. And you know, there was a big theme around how to manage through chaos over the whole COVID period, and with these articles that came out, and Gallup were right in front, and there was really good research that was done. But actually, where's the end of that? I mean, there's just a new chaos nearly. There's a new, and I think that the future chaos is going to be the battle for talent, and not having a strong anchor in a loyalty and brand through the sort of different ways of working, or just the new ways of working, if you like. And it'll take time for that to find a way to settle back down again, and everybody to settle into their corners, if you like.
Very interesting, very interesting. Mark, back to you as we wrap up what has been a very, very interesting podcast. Your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a number of things there, and I was just thinking about Mary said about flexibility, and I suppose, again, coming from my area of being financial, I suppose I'm always trying to encourage people to be ready for the worst and you know, prepare for their goals in the future. But you know, just even that ability to be ready for the worst gives you capacity and a little bit of flexibility when you know things hit us in the path. You know, I suppose the theme today was goals for the future, but I thought it was very important there when Jordan mentioned his previous employer. They looked at supporting you when you were in trouble. And I think that's one of the really more important things that have come to the fore in the last 18 months. And I know if I was an employee, it'd be nice to feel that that was there in the background. So I think that's a great initiative. And Roisin was mentioning about change. And look, life is always full of changes. Finances are full of changes. Every aspect of our life is full of changes. So I think that at least with learning and development now and our ability to actually learn at home or learn quickly in small kind of snapshots, it gives us that capacity to learn about various different things and how to deal with different situations. We don't have to go and drive 2 hours to attend a class. We can do it in the comfort of our own home. So these changes have been very positive. For me, there's been probably 2 tracks after COVID. There's been people who've done very well and people who've suffered greatly. Obviously, the people who've done very well are coming back now and they're saying, yeah, we really need advice on how to, do invest our money, all that thing. And then there's people who've suffered and who need to get back on track with their basic financial things. And I think these are the people we have to kind of consider as well and try and help as much as possible. And I think probably they're to the fore of everybody's plans here on the podcast today,
Great. Listen, Mark, as always, thank you very, very much. And I want to thank Mary McDonagh, Head of HR and Payroll Services at IFAC Ireland, Maura Winston, Chief People Officer at Cairn Homes PLC, Dr. Arlene Egan, Director of Learning and Thought Leadership, Executive Coach at Roffey Park International, Roisin Walsh, who's Head of People and Culture at Publicjobs.ie, and Jordan McCullough, Group People and Culture Manager at the Bluewave Group. So thank you all very, very, very much, and until next time.